paying you. Marcus Bell is a Nikon ambassador from Australia. Marcus and I have known each other for many, many years, and he's no rookie to this stage, right, Marcus?
Oh man, I love it.
So you're going to talk about releasing creativity today.
It is. That's what I'm going to be talking about. Is my passion on photography.
So, ladies and gentlemen, we got Marcus Bell right here for your pleasure and education and entertainment. Marcus Bell.
Awesome. Thanks so much, guys, for coming and checking everything out. I love being on this stage. And thanks for Nikon for inviting me back this year. WPPI is it's like a family, and what I love is the inspiration that I take away each year. So I get to go around to and looking at the print awards. So if you're watching on live, you can head over now also and look at those images online. I'm always inspired. And one of the things that I really love is, with photography, is like the actual taking the documentary sort of style of images. And what I was really inspired by was Henry Cartier-Bresson and Magnum photographers early on in my career. And it's had a huge influence in what I do. Because these photographers have taken some of the most iconic images in the history, around, in the last 50, 60, 70 years. And what I love about what they do is not only document the world, but there is an incredible creativity that they have. And I think for photography, for me, it's what I love about weddings. Is that it's all these amazing moments and celebration of life that really ends up, bringing all these people together and celebrate on one day. And for me, documenting those moments is what I'm passionate about the most. But with these Magnum photographers, not only were they incredible documentary photographers, but really creative photographers as well. So some of my favorite portraits that I've ever seen were taken by these photographers as well. And so especially when I was on a trip, this is how it influenced me. And it was like my transition from being a banker to becoming a photographer. I was fortunate enough me and my wife go for 6 months around Europe, and we saved our butts off for years and years to make this happen because I had a dream. I wanted to try to be a photographer and move away from the banking world. And we were going down this laneway at a country road in the middle of Ireland, and this man comes up to us and stops us. And I started freaking out, but we pulled over and we got to talk to him, and it was very strong Gaelic that he was talking, but we understood that he was actually trying to give us his dog because he explained that he couldn't feed it anymore. Anyway, and so we explained that, look, we're just starting our journey, we're just on this, quest, and what we were doing, and unfortunately we couldn't take the dog, but it was just a great experience. We jumped in the car. I got a couple hundred feet down the road, and this thing just came over me and go, "What are you doing, Marcus? Stop!" He would be the most amazing person to photograph. But for instance, what I think up until that point, I was already on this trip for a month, and to be honest, I was failing as a photographer. I just couldn't, get into any rhythm or do anything. Anyway, so I stopped and I ran back. I just grabbed whatever camera I had, started photographing him, and he got a little bit agitated. But then I stopped myself, calmed down, and went, we just started talking again. And I took, one frame, and I got the portrait. And when I got this contact sheet, developed, this image just jumped out of the frame to me. And for me, finally, it gave me belief that I could actually maybe one day be a photographer. And I think that was one of the biggest things that I learned, through that trip. And I learned today is that I think fear, is one of the biggest hurdles that we've got to overcome to become, a photographer. And because I think it takes a lot of guts to go up and, take a portrait of someone. And it's just one of those skills that I've learned over a period of time. It's all the way that we are talking to people, giving them the respect. And then I take those ideas now into photography. So it was all of that birth of me, understanding and, being inspired by these Magnum photographers and capturing that documentary style. But then I started looking at their creative portraits and how could I be creative at a wedding photography. And this is what I just started doing, was images like this. I wanted to include more of the environment within the image and tell the story, of the day. And interestingly enough, when I started doing this, photographers are going, look, you can't do this. Like, this is not going to fly. This is not what wedding photography is about. But one of the most important things that I realized is to not listen to those people. Is stay true to your own beliefs and believe in what you want to do. And that's a hard thing, I think, as photographers, to stand up and sort of be the different person in the room. But one of the things that I realized too, when photographing these images, is that it needed like an added depth, to tell the story. So I had to start thinking about creativity of how I could do that. And a lot of it was about through body language. And even if I'm going to have these little people in the frame, it really is the gesture of him picking up her dress that really sort of talks about the tenderness and that connection and that love for each other, even in just sometimes, very minute ways that make the difference between an image that's going to work and not work. So now, I've been very fortunate enough to actually be taken around the world by clients into beautiful locations like this. And Yumi and Chris brought me over to Guam, and they said, "Oh, we've got to get this shot. Like it's at this magic place, and it was like a rite of passage." And so that rite of passage was there's this ocean view, and it's so majestic, it's so beautiful. And so I went and did that for them. But I looked over my shoulder and I saw this beautiful, majestic view. Now, Yumi said we were able to photograph there, but then out of the corner of my eye, I saw this buffalo coming up the hill, and then I realized that buffalo was heading towards me because they're quite a distance away. They were okay. Now, on top of this buffalo was Mr. T, or, I think a descendant of Mr. T. So I was starting to get really intimidated, and I'm thinking, you know what, I know that we're allowed to be here. But I'm wondering what he's doing, coming up to me, charging up this hill. Anyway, he reaches me and he goes, "What are you doing?" And I go, "I don't know." But I just said, "Look, we're allowed to be here." And he goes, "Yeah, but look behind you, that's the view, that's what everyone comes." He goes, "I'm the custodian of this land." Is that I've grown up since I was a little boy, and I see every wedding that is photographed here, and it's the most famous place in Guam to, get your wedding photo taken. And he said, "No one has ever taken a photo this way before." And I said, "I know, it's just so beautiful and majestic." And he just said to me, "I know." But you could tell why I was a bit nervous. But that day, I realized one thing, is that, I have these incredible clients that believe in me. So my clients see something in what I do that they want. They, I see the world differently, and we all see the world differently to each other. And my clients are gravitated to how I see the world and how I see it differently. And there is this beautiful vista, this beautiful coastline, and I loved it. It was beautiful. But we got that shot, and for me, I felt like it was the safe shot. Except when Mr. T was in it. So, but then, when I always learn to look behind my shoulder. Sometimes we're looking at the sunset, and it's so beautiful, majestic, but then sometimes the beauty is actually falling, behind our shoulder. So I've learned always to look around, always be aware of our surrounds, and look at what the opportunity we have. So this is a wedding that I did in Sydney. I flew down the morning of, and I'm going to talk about pre-planning. And this time around, I didn't get a chance to do what I normally do, but I got there early in the morning. First flight from Brisbane down into Sydney, and then what happened was that I decided just to start early, and I was at the same time able to check out the venue. And luckily, the venues where the reception and the ceremony was all interconnecting. And during that time, of preparation and also going and shooting the details while there was a little break, is that I noticed this vantage point, and I thought I knew that's where the bride was getting ready, and that's where they were staying. And I saw this window, and I thought, wow, that would be perfect. And I sort of talked to the couple, but unfortunately, we ran out of time during the day. But what was important is that the day just went so fast, like most weddings do. And then what happened is that they said, "Oh, can we still do that shot?" And it was I looked at my watch, it's past midnight already. And I said, "Sure, let's do it." But so by 1 o'clock, they had to do a few things. And so this is 1 o'clock in the morning, and it was so worth it. So I think one of the tools that we've got, that available to us is going beyond all expectations. So in fact, I was supposed to finish like hours earlier. The contract said, finish by this time, but I was just having such a good time, and I knew there was such an energy that it really needed to capture, and I just stayed on and photographed the rest. But this is just another viewpoint. And for me to do a lot of these shots, we sort of pre-plan, we talk about what we want to do. One of the, I guess, the secrets in what I do is that I allow them just to be themselves. So there's no overly directing. Sometimes, they need, or they want a little bit of prompting, but a lot of the time, they also can just be themselves. But I'm just sort of setting the scene and letting them, do their own thing. But in this case, we could just communicate, either by the telephone or, I will sort of go through a few descriptions, and it's really easy. Like if I say, like come like this or like that, it's like, get closer together. If I say come in, like, have a little kiss or, embrace, and if, just separate. So sometimes it's just really easy body language and signals that I'm doing. But you can also even use things like walkie-talkies and things like that. Because sometimes, like, it could be like a mile away that I'm photographing them using a telephoto lens. And so obviously that communication is sometimes, really key. So I want to talk about pre-planning. And this is so important, I think. There's often where it's days before or even weeks before, or even months before that I'm doing pre-planning, and I'm going throughout the entire day and sort of dissecting it. And at each point of the day, I'm looking at opportunities that is available to me to do these creative portraits. So no matter what wedding I'm doing, I'm going to just, do my documentary style, throughout anyway. I mean, that's what I love about capturing. But if I see an opportunity that I can do like a creative portrait, something like this, or, a beautiful portrait of just the bride, I'm going to take that time. But also even with the family and friends as well. And so what I can do here is like, days before or even the day before is go around with my phone, take sort of pictures, and then I'll choose all my favorite images and print them out like a contact sheet. And then what I would do is actually go ahead and then just draw on it, on those images, and say, I want to do just a portrait. They're going to be static just here. Or I might sort of describe that they're going to just flow through the scene, and then I'll just draw that. And then once I've drawn that and I've got a basic idea, is then I will start thinking about, okay, well, how can I get them to do that? Because I don't really want to tell them, and direct them too much. So I will put myself in position knowing that I'm in the right spot, and I say, let's go this way. And then I know where to stop, turn around, and get the shot, and they're in the right position for that. So for me, like pre-planning is such a great, important tool that's available to us. It's just as important as this, which I absolutely love. I love like the Z system, or the Z system in America. But let's call it the Z for today. But it's like gives me so much freedom, and and I'll talk a little bit more about that later. Sometimes, like this is in Singapore, and this is one of the things that I learn about very early on. Doing destination weddings was, finding local knowledge, finding the local experts, and seeking out that knowledge. Now, there's always Google Maps, and you can, do research, but having someone on the ground that knows the lay of the land is so important. And I think what I found out earlier is that I had my first wedding in Bali, and I had this idea of this shot. I planned it out, and I realized I needed something powerful. I needed a powerful portable flash to be able to do the shot. And so what happened was that I contacted Profoto. I knew that they had a distributor there. I organized to hire my lighting so I didn't have to bring it from Australia. But during that phone call, they also said, would you like an assistant? And I said, sure, that'd be great. And so pretty much the assistant was cheaper than hiring the lights, but it was like they were an expert at what they did. And from that point on, it sort of gave me the idea of finding someone local because they knew the lay of the land, and it was so important. And in fact, in this case, Brian and Jean came and helped me on this wedding, and they're two amazing photographers in Singapore. And since then, we became such good friends, and I also, got to photograph their wedding. So this is another important thing I found is having client participation, and also they have like sometimes a wish list of what they would like me to do, and Terry said that he wanted a beautiful portrait of his wife at the hotel. So I went to the hotel 2 days before, looked at all the options available to me, and sort of designed this shot days ahead of doing it. And I knew that if we had the opportunity, so sometimes I have all these ideas and we run out of time or something else happens. We've got to be work on the fly. But the more that I prepare, also I do know more other opportunities arise as well. Because I think what happens is that I get into that creative space. So there's got to be a point during the week that I know I've got the wedding on the weekend or a couple of days ahead. I stop the emails, I stop everything else, and I start getting into a creative zone and mind rather than just turning up on the day and hoping for the best. My clients aren't paying me good money to do that. They're paying me to prepare. They're paying me to turn up. They're also paying me, to be really creative. And that's what I love. I love that I get to do that. So also these ideas grow. So I did that shot, and then later on I did another shot. I saw a balcony, and I saw the opportunity. Oh, wow, look at that balcony. I could just get up there and shoot something that I did with Terry, a month or two earlier, and then I can expand on ideas. So this is where, that creativity just flows for me as well. And also flying by the seat of pants, we were going down, this is in Bali, we were going down to this beautiful seaside shore, and it's these rock formations that I absolutely love. But then I saw they were doing, not that it's in climate change, but they were doing this burning off. Excuse me. And the burning off was just crazy. But it was, then I noticed the light coming through, and I said, guys, you just got to head over there. Just do whatever you want to do. Pretty much, because I just knew that it was just such a majestic scene. So sometimes you've got to take advantage of something that you see and just don't wait. And we still were able to get down to the beautiful rocks, but take advantage, so it was cool. This is sort of backlighting, and I've sort of learned a lot of these skills from a good friend, Cliff Mountner. He's the guru of backlighting. His knowledge is so incredible. So if you actually ever get a chance to do one of his workshops, I highly recommend it. And for me, what I learned is that by placing a dark subject, having the sun behind them and rimming that light, so this is just all available light. So this isn't actually using flash. But when I started to learn about this, is that I realized that I could use either flash or a continuous light and be able to capture that as well and use something different. So, and this was the case. This was using, one of the stellar lights from Light and Motion, and so there was all this ambient light. And this is what I love about the Z6. It just handles light like this so beautifully and perfectly, and I'm able to see it and see how it's evolving in the EVF. So then I can see that using a continuous light, I'm getting instant feedback. And that's what I love about the mirrorless system, is that I'm able to learn and be able to do that. And now what I love to do as well is that because I do a lot of destination weddings, the backup is really, really important. So in my bag these days, what I have is this wireless SSD drive from Western Digital. And what it does is that it automatically, when I'm shooting, it actually then goes through to this drive as well. So it becomes an instant backup. And I think that's what, for me, it's just added security. But also it's important, for my clients, that they know that, we've got the camera, but then we've also got another copy as well. So that just sort of stays in my bag all day. And then when I'm actually capturing light like this, and I'm lighting them behind, there's actually a gap between the tree, and that light is then coming around and filling into the front as well. This is something completely different. This is where I would use the more stronger pro photo light. So this is in daylight, but also using a shadow area. But so we've got the bright light up here, and I needed to balance that. So I wanted to have something quite powerful from behind, but then also have a softbox on the side, but have that channeling in from a distance, so I didn't have to do it. But one of the things that we can do is that you can always include the person with the light, but then easily take them out in post. But if you can get it right in camera, honestly, it makes it so much easier as well. This is a portrait I got to do on a campaign with Stephanie Gilmore, 5 times world champ, amazing person. And during the shoot, there was a film crew, And they had this huge commercial drone. And I had the idea, I said, how cool would it be like to put like a B1X Profoto light on this drone? And so, because when we had her out in the surf, and it's sometimes what I've done in Bali is that like we've had the lights and I send them out into the surf, but I do worry about them coming back, alive. So this way, like we actually hooked up the light to the drone. I mean, this is not this isn't a little Mavic drone. This is like a proper, commercial drone. So it's just amazing, what we can do. So we're only ever limited by, our imagination. And I think that's really important is that, we can just think like the possibilities are endless. And I think what happened was that when I, was introduced to those, Magnum photographers, is that I saw like a window into the future because, these guys were just breaking new ground all the time, creating all these incredible images. And then I just was inspired by that in how they did that. And then that's what led to ideas like this for me. I'm a huge believer of natural light as well. So I saw this shaft of light, and it was really just sort of simply asking her to walk up the stairs. We probably did it, a couple times just to get it right, because it was just perfectly falling through, into that area. So one of the things is that, like, the good thing about natural light, what I love, is that we can just work on the fly so quickly and easily. But there are nearest times when we need to have, additional lighting that we can use. And that's where I have both continuous light and also strobes as well. And also for receptions, just having the speed lights, on my hot shoe is also important as well. Like I'm really blessed, with the clients I had and the belief that they have in me. This is Lake Como, and this is actually on their wedding day. I got in a couple of days earlier and, they were doing a rehearsal dinner and a few other things. And during that time, I was just thinking, how awesome would it be to use one of their traditional boats and have them in it? And I talked to the wedding planner and we talked to the couple and I said, it's possible, but it would cost quite a bit to hire the boat. And I needed to hire another boat to shoot from it because we're in, a massive lake. And one of the things that was important to me is being there and doing something different, and again, going beyond all expectations, is that they believed in me and they entrusted me. So it was important for me to pay them back somehow. And, for me, this is how, I thought about it. And then they said, you know what, Marcus, that's why we got you here. Let's do it. We believe in you. Let's, whatever you want to do, we trust you. And that was, so important about, having clients like that. And I think that's when you put out the images, those rewards come back to you and the clients too. So this is the reception. This is Villa Babinello. It's been in a bunch of famous movies. And but the thing is that no one's ever done anything like this before, And so now that's inspired other photographers to push, limits as well, which is really exciting. Because they have those beautiful Riviera boats, and they do that all the time. They're out on the lake, in those, majestic boats, but we're just wanting to do something a little bit different. So at the same time, I'm always, thinking about shooting the environment as well, capturing the full story for them. So we're rounding out the story. So it's not just, this was one of the reasons they wanted to have their wedding there. So now that can be their image as well. The other thing is, remember how I was talking about pre-planning? We had this sort of building in my sort of visual diary. And so when I went back, excuse me, I was able to look at the image or think about this space and how I could use it for their wedding. But I knew about this building, from Laura and Jahan, but we didn't get to use it like this. So then I was able to then, use it at a different time. So the pre-planning you do will always come back to you. And also for me, it also sparks, that extra planning and that extra creativity that you're able to do. You can go back to other ideas and expand upon them as well. So this is one of the places that I absolutely love to go to. It's called Alila Uluwatu in Bali. And this was what wasn't I get asked to, duplicate this shot. but it's always different. And the reason why it's always different is because of the people that I'm photographing are different. And I always have a connection with them and I see them differently. And then I'm trying to include just who they are and how to express themselves. So one of the things here is that like the very first time I used this location, I had to go through all these loopholes to make sure that we could do this shot. Like it's actually a really super safe shot to do. So there's probably a foot where they can stand. And it's only like a tiny little drop off, so it's pretty safe. But then about like, I guess in feet, it's probably like 15 feet. So in this like with bushes and grass and everything like that. But then there's like a couple 100 feet drop off to the beach below. So, the hotel at first, when I pitched the idea, I wanted to do this shot, they said, we can't do that. And then I showed them what we could do, and then okay. And then they got it as well, got on board. And now, like doing this shot, so many people want to get married there, because, we went beyond what, we thought we could do. And then I get invited back, and sometimes we just end up using it differently. Like it was really funny for these guys' wedding. They're so awesome. And we weren't supposed to do this shot, but I had to think on the fly. They wanted to do like an underwater shot. But because they were from the UK, and like swimming is not like their number one pastime in the UK, is that like when we started to do it, they realized they couldn't stay underwater, to get the shot. And half an hour I was helping them and, sort of training them, giving them tips on what to do. And what happened was I made an error with the camera, and so the underwater camera died when we were just about to get it right. So I had to think really fast. So now I've got my, at the time it was the D750, and I've got it like on the edge of the water. So I'm in the middle of the pool, soaking wet, with my camera, putting everything at risk, but make sure to get the shot, and then to, work out. So I think that's again, like, is having those ideas and then being able to think on the fly is super important as well. But I think by all the things that you do and think about prepare you for moments like this. And that's what I love about being able to do that. This is another shot in Bali. Obviously, I love going to Bali. Anyone wants me to do a wedding in Bali, I am there. So now these guys, Julia and Jackson, like amazing couple. It was like probably one of the biggest party of a wedding that I've ever been to. Super incredible. And I saw this spot and I said, oh, wouldn't it be cool to get out there? And Julie goes, I'll go. And I go, all right, and I was like, but luckily behind here there was a few rocks, but she just lifted up her dress and just walked straight out. And when I said, Jackson, you're going to go out there? And he goes, no way. And I looked at his shoes, and he had like the nicest shoes, so I could totally like get it and understand. But there was a way where we could get from the beach here onto that rock to that rock, and he didn't get wet at all. So, but funny enough, like, being flexible and meant that this ended up being a much better shot anyway, because I just love where he's standing and admiring her. Like she's the most amazing bride, most amazing person. And for me, Jackson sees that. That's why, why they got married, and that's what that image represents. And, and everything else just comes together. But really, it's the connection between the people that are the most important thing. So if you can be relaxed, if you can just go ahead and like do all this pre-planning and think about all these options, then you're just relaxed, which means automatically they're relaxed. And that becomes like where everything else comes together, beautifully. So this is why I love this system. Like it's so incredible, is that this is actually shot with the Noct. And I really wanted a softness, a really shallow depth of field. So this is at 0.95. And then like I just wanted to throw those leaves around and do it and be able to do that. And so that's what I love about shooting with this system. And it's super light. One of the things that I find too is like doing different things is that I got invited to a track day, and I love shooting motorsports, and I got to learn how to pan and do all of those things. Now this is actually not done in camera; it's actually done in post. But I was inspired by what I learned on a track day. Now I have done shots like this, like using proper panning techniques, but looking at all the options of creativity is important. So sometimes you might want to do things in post, and I think it's completely cool to do it. This is another example, is that this is actually all done in camera. I've been really cool. I love how like people use their phones, like they just sort of bring the phone up under the lens and it does a reflection for you, and which is super helpful if you got like just an okay scene, but it's amazing up the top, but you want to really illuminate the bottom. It really makes images just sing, perfectly. But instead, I wanted to go beyond that. And this place is called One Tree Hill. It's a popular place for wedding photos. And I wanted to do something different. And so I went to a hardware store and bought 5-foot sheet perspex so I could create that reflection. So I got a really good friend, Todd Hunter McGaw, who's an amazing photographer. He came and helped me on this day. He's holding up like a sheet, and then the makeup is holding the other sheet to be able to create that reflection. So what I wanted to thank you today is for joining me, and thank you for Nikon doing, being so incredible. And next coming on is Shami, and she's going to rock it. She's the most amazing photographer known to the entire world, I think.
What a promo. What a promo.
Oh, no.
I don't even need to do this anymore. Ladies and gentlemen, Marcus Bell.
Excellent. Thanks, mate.
Awesome program. So, as we said, back to back to open up this